would like to wish everyone here a good morning. I see some familiar faces out there. We are absolutely thrilled that so many of you could take time out of your busy day to come and learn a little bit more about homelessness. My name is Reverend Kyle. I'm the minister here at First Unitarian. And on behalf of our homelessness team, who has worked tirelessly to make this event possible, I welcome you this morning. Homelessness is an issue that is here and is not going away. I have been surprised to hear from numerous people I've talked to that some communities are just turning a blind eye. They are obviously very affected by the issue of homelessness and unsheltered individuals, and yet not a lot is being done. We do not want that to be the case in our neighborhood or in our city of Louisville, and so we're doing what we can to fight that off. And so I won't say much more because there's a lot of information that Tim and others will be offering us today, so I want to get right into it, but a heartfelt thank you for being among us today. And now I will hand it over to the person who has worked tirelessly and deserves actually a round of applause for all that she's done to make this and other things happen, Cassandra Culin.
Thank you. So on behalf of First Unitarian's Committee on Homelessness, I welcome all of you. We had no idea when we planned this workshop, because we needed it, that it would have such wide appeal. I want to thank the wonderful work of our committee members, the partnership with Central Louisville Community Ministries and Lynette Lau, and the significant support of Natalie Harris and the Coalition for the Homeless. Some housekeeping announcements. If you haven't seen them yet, there are refreshments in the social hall. Go out the door and turn left. There are for all gender restrooms are on this floor. You go through the social hall, turn right down the hall. Gendered restrooms are upstairs. You can use the stairs in the entranceway, go through the door and go right down that hall, or use the elevator and turn right down the hall. There's a sign up there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, or probably no introductions are necessary, to Councilwoman Barbara Sexton Smith. You can get a little taste of her achievements in her bio. She represents Metro Louisville District 4. We are thrilled that our church is in her district and that she is with us on the important issues that we are addressing today.
Well, good morning. And as I always love to say, welcome to District 4. I love my work, and my work loves me back. I've known many of you, and I recognize a lot of you from the last 25 to 30 years. Either I crossed paths with you when I was fundraising for Metro United Way, which is where my extreme interest in education and journey began with social services and the need for that. And then I recognize some of your faces from my many years, 17 to be exact, of my time with the Fund for the Arts, because then I realized arts and culture play a much bigger role in our community and in our society. And I am one of those folks that believe that arts and culture can help us understand where we've been. They try to explain where we are, and then they help us suspend our disbelief to think about what the future may come. And then lo and behold you, I rewired, that's rewirement, when I thought I was going to retire and ride my bicycle. That's right. Y'all come on, jump in. I need people to rewire. What that means is I believe, when you are approaching the age of 60, whatever your career has been or is, I challenge everyone to think beyond what you're doing and not retire, because we're all too young. Healthcare really is getting better. How we pay for it is not. That was not a political statement, but I had to just say that. I watch too much news all night, every evening. However, I challenge everyone to think about rewiring your life and take your first 60 years as you're approaching that age and think, what could I do? What am I so passionate about that I can't wait to get up in the morning and go do that? Wouldn't that be exciting, right? So if you're wondering how many cups of coffee I had, I only had 1 or 2 this morning. I wake up like this every day. As I said, I love my work and it loves me back. So what I did when I rewired at 57 years of age, that was 5, 6 years ago, from the Fund for the Arts, I had the best job in the country in my mind. I loved that work. It took me everywhere. It gave me platforms that I never dreamed possible, but something said, be still. I'm not going to preach, although the first sermon I ever gave really was right there. Thank you, church, for letting me do that. And so I believed that I needed to get still and wait for the next calling, wait for the next assignment. So those of you that are wondering, what the heck is Barbara going to do when she goes out of office December 31st at 12:01 midnight this coming December? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just be still, and he will reassign me, and away I'll go. And I'm probably going to need an extra feather or 2. We all have wings. We just don't let them spread as much as we need to. So that is what today is about, being here together in my mind. So I have 2 questions that I want to pose to you, and I'm only going to speak for about a total of about 10 minutes this morning because I asked if I could be here and participate because, one, I wanted to make sure that I publicly thanked the church and publicly thanked the Committee on Homelessness here. Raise your hand if you've been on the committee here at this church. Okay, the rest of you, give them a round of applause. So it was 2.5 years ago when I became very focused on those experiencing homelessness by trying to use the power and authority invested in me as an elected official. And if you recall, 2.5 years ago in that November, that is when a gentleman almost froze to death outside. He was an amputee in a wheelchair. You may remember this gentleman. And so there was a lot of controversy over that. And the city's response was immediately, clean up all these camps, clear out all these folks. Well, hold on. Not so fast. That was November. I was a fairly new council person, and I realized that we were going to have our audit presented from the previous fiscal year, and if there were to be a surplus in that funding, the Metro Council gets an opportunity to vote on what to do with that. Mayor Fisher can only say what he presents he wants to do with it. Remember, it was $621,000 that year. And right before the vote was coming, nobody saw it coming. I went to Councilman Bill Hollander, who is a champion for those experiencing homelessness. And I said, Councilman, Chairman of the Budget Committee, I'm going to propose an amendment to this ordinance being proposed by the mayor, and I want every bit of that money to go to a pilot project for those experiencing homelessness. And he said, I'm in. We carved out $50,000 for the Louisville Zoo, if you're wondering, if you want to know all the details, and away we went. And basically, the rest is history, and then some. So the money was appropriated, and the pilot program was wildly successful in my mind. We knew we needed a low-barrier shelter. We did that with Wayside. We knew we needed temporary storage for those experiencing homelessness, because could you imagine going on a job interview and carrying everything you own with you? That's not going to work. Can you imagine trying to go to work and every night you're trying to figure out where am I going to store safely everything I own to get to that job? And people don't tend to understand that unless you're in that situation. So then we realized we needed paid professional outreach workers. Some of you are in the room today, and you will be hearing from some of our paid professional outreach workers. These are the folks that really understand vertically and horizontally the plight and the journey of someone experiencing homelessness. And people experiencing homelessness come into that from a whole variety of reasons. You'll hear more about that today. So then the paid outreach workers, that was very successful. And then it occurred to me, there were 10 or 12 nonprofit organizations. Some were completely volunteer run, and others had some paid folks and mainly volunteer run who were really super Samaritans. That's one of my messages this morning. Are you a super Samaritan? And I'll give you a chance to think about that on the road to Jericho in a moment. And so we were wondering, how is it that we can help folks not create unintended consequences by their serving and their service and trying to help those experiencing homelessness? That was very confusing to a lot of folks. And then Cassandra reached out to me a number of times. I've talked with Trish many, many times and said, our church is going to put together an ad hoc committee. And I was a little disappointed because I wanted it a full-blown committee, number one priority for the whole year. But I'm going to tell you, First Unitarian did this right. Took their time, researched it, had an ad hoc committee, and they then interviewed me as well as many other people. And then the church decided that they were going to approve a full-blown homelessness task force committee. And I am so grateful for that. I was asked by the committee, so what do you think we need? I said, I need help communicating to the community at large, that would be you this morning, and what works, what doesn't work, what is help and what is not help. What kind of things do those experiencing homelessness need and don't need? What will they accept and not accept? And how can we work together? So today is the first shot at that. This is a fabulous turnout. If anybody's wondering what we think about the turnout, I am so excited I can't see straight. Because where there are two or more are gathered, and there you have it. So we can do great things together. So I mentioned that I would let you know a little bit about being a super Samaritan. So my few opening remarks were titled, thanks to Cassandra for reminding me, The Road to Jericho. I get teased a lot by my colleagues that by the time I go out of office, I will literally rename every city in the street in every street in the city of Louisville, because I have renamed a lot of streets with honorary names for good and sufficient reasons. However, I think every street in the city of Louisville really is named the Road to Jericho. Yes, it is, because at any point in time in any one of our lives, we are going to find ourselves confronted with this question: which character are you at any given point in time on the road to Jericho? And you may remember the quick story about the Good Samaritan. So there are 5 characters in my opinion, and I think each of us experiences being one of those characters throughout our lifetime. I challenge you to think about this with me. So what are they? Are you the character that is the priest or the Levite that looked and said, when they saw the man beaten and naked and unclothed on the other side of the street, did you go by and help that person? Or would you say, not now, I don't have time, I don't want to get involved, I'll do that later? You're not going to raise your hands, but we all have those experiences. Look at y'all laugh. Thank you for doing that. So that's one character. And then the next character, obviously, is the poor gentleman who's lying on the road, beaten and naked and unfed and unclothed and unhoused, who obviously needs assistance. I've been there. I'm sure everyone has been there in one way or another. And then, are you possibly the Samaritan? All right, think about being the Samaritan. I can equate that to what it might be like to be experiencing racism today. The Samaritans were hated individuals, all right? Can you imagine being, well, let's take it to something very drastic. Can you imagine being a person of the Jewish faith and actually providing assistance to Adolf Hitler if he needed you? I know that's pretty raw, but I want you to think about that as the Good Samaritan went by. And then, you know the character that I really like that I didn't think a lot about until these last couple of years? The innkeeper. Are you the innkeeper? Have you been the innkeeper? So what are the characteristics of the innkeeper? The innkeeper is one that had faith and trust in a reservoir of goodwill with this Good Samaritan. Because remember, when the Good Samaritan put the man who was naked and beaten in his Uber, which was a donkey at the time, all right? There's lots of ways to transport folks. Put that man in that Uber donkey and went to the inn, the Good Samaritan said to the innkeeper, I can't stay. I'm on my way out of town. I'll be back. I don't know when I'll be back, but will you care for this man, and I will pay you whatever the cost is. Have you ever been there? Think about that for a moment. Would you do that? Would you do that? So as you're thinking about those characters, my first question is, which character are you on the road to Jericho? And you got a chance to be any one of those on any given day in the city of Louisville, as far as I'm concerned. And then closing, if you think about moving out of Scripture and move over to Shakespeare, I'm also one of those folks that believes just about everything ever written stems somehow from the Old and the New Testament and the complete works of Shakespeare. So if you go to King Lear for a moment, oh my goodness, King Lear was produced in our city last year, right in the middle of this where we're trying to figure out how to assist those experiencing homelessness. I didn't really understand King Lear until I went to Central Park and listened to it. Oh gosh, one of the greatest lines in that play, remember, he was not close to the people that he was leading. He was told he needed to get out and walk amongst the people and experience what the people were experiencing. And he said, if you recall, I may not get this exactly right, but you'll recognize one or two of the words. Somebody can help me out if you know the whole phrase. It is something like, how is it that these houseless heads, unfed sides, looped and windowed raggedness, how do you defend yourself against storms such as these? Houseless heads, no house, no shelter. Unfed sides, no food, right? How is it? And looped and windowed raggedness, your clothing. Immediately that took me right back to what my father taught me as a little girl. This is controversial, but my daddy used to say this all the time. And I was one of the first kids on a reduced and free breakfast and lunch program at a school. I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. I didn't know what that meant until I got a lot older and started hearing people talk about it, because I was loved at my home. And my dad would every once in a while say to me, Barbara Ann, let me tell you something. I'm going to teach you about money. I'm going to teach you how to make money, and I'm going to teach you how to save money. You need to save money because you may need to help yourself at some point, but you need to save money so you're prepared financially to help someone else if you need to. Think about that in your budgeting. And he said, Barbara Ann, money can buy happiness. And ladies and gentlemen, that used to make me so mad. How could money buy happiness? As a little girl, I didn't understand it. So I asked him one night about it. And he said, if you have enough money to buy food, clothing, and shelter for yourself and those that count on you, you're going to be happier than the person that doesn't. I got it. And then my mother would always say, mother was born in a coal camp in the mountains of eastern Kentucky and orphaned. So I really do come from absolutely pelting, pitiless storms, if you will. Mother would say, Barbara Ann, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect anybody else to love you? So that takes us to the end of that story. If you read the passages of the Good Samaritan, you have to fear not and love one another. Yes, you do, but you can't love one another unless we love ourselves. And lastly, Cassandra, everybody think about the Statue of Liberty. Oh my goodness, she is that beacon of hope for which our country stands on and is built on and supposedly lives by. Is she? Where are we? Where are we as a nation? Where are you as a citizen? Where are we as a community? Because she stands, her waistline was 35 feet. Think about that, y'all. 35 feet in diameter, and those shackles were broken on her feet, and she stood so tall. And do you know the only words that are inscribed on the Statue of Liberty? Everybody thinks that there's a poem inscribed there. It's not. July 4th, 1776 is the only thing inscribed. So you're saying, well, what about that, bring me your tired, your weary? That was a poem that was written by a woman for the fundraising campaign. So I just thought that was an interesting little factoid. So please join me, Cassandra. So as I close, which character are you in the Good Samaritan? And then also, what role do you want your government to play? Do you want us to be big or do you want us to be small? If you want us to be big, we'll solve all the problems. You just got to give us the money. Okay, that's a whole other subject. And if you want it to be small, that's where you come in. It's a table of life. We got 8 chairs. The interfaith community's in one, government, business, nonprofit, healthcare, education, transportation, and community at large. So pull up a seat and ask yourself, which character am I on the road to Jericho? So thank you and congratulations for being here this morning. Cassandra, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I'd like to introduce Tim Welsh. We had quite an adventure trying to find the absolute perfect person to do this presentation. Tim is a lifelong Louisvillian, and he's a licensed, whatever it is, clinical, a social worker, whatever, at the Family Health Center. He worked